بين الرجا والخوف علينا وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر على من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
Okay, so before I get started into the video, this is a mini interruption. I just want to share something that I did recently. I recently wore the niqab. Here's like some pictures of me in the niqab, and it was such a amazing experience to wear it. I never thought I would wear the niqab. I always thought the niqab was weird as a non-Muslim, to be honest, because you don't quite understand it until you actually learn more about Islam. And my mentor, who Sister Muna, aka Miriam, she knows the inside joke if she's watching. She is one of the most beautiful women I know, and she wears a niqab. And I've met so many amazing women who wear the niqab at my mosque, and I just see it as another like layer of veiling yourself, which the Quran recommends that women should do. And I saw it and I was like, I wonder how I would look in a niqab. And before, there was a filter, before I became Muslim, there was a filter on Instagram that looks like a niqab, like that makes you basically a niqabi. And I tried it on. This was like maybe like a few years before I became Muslim. I was like, oh, I look so cute. So I don't know what quite called me to wear the niqab per se, but I was like, oh, I want to try it to see how I look in it, you know? And there's this girl in my Arabic class who wears a niqab, so I was like asking her where she get hers from, and she goes, oh, you can try on my niqab in the bathroom. So I tried it on, and literally I felt so beautiful in it. Like on my way home, I was crying after like I tried it on, which is so funny. A funny thing is like I'm literally crying and I'm like at a stoplight and I'm like hysterically crying, and there's this guy in the car next to me, and he gives me a dirty look, and I'm like, what about my tears is making you mad, sir? But that happened. And then subhanallah, she gave me some niqabs. Like, this Muslim community that I am a part of is truly a blessing, and I don't take them for granted, and all I can do is say alhamdulillah for having them with me. So I tried on one of her niqabs that she gave me, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it and go outside. I'm gonna go and do my errands and wear the niqab. And it was such a beautiful experience. I just wanted to share that with you. Now let's go to the video. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video, I thought I would talk about ways that Islam has changed me, ways that I have improved in my faith because of Islam, and I thought I would share that with you all today. So I have been Muslim for almost a year and 5 months. And so much have changed within that year and 5 months that even my friends can see like a difference within me based on how Islam has changed me and so forth. And it's just not all about like outer appearance, like how I dress as a Muslim and stuff. Like even the way that I am as a human now has been different. So I thought I would share some of the ways that has changed. So the first thing that I felt since becoming Muslim is feeling at peace. I was on a healing journey for about 5 years before I did my Shahada, you know, figuring out past traumas and stuff like that, dealing with anxiety and coming to terms with like coping with all of that and finding out best ways for me to improve, dealing with all that stuff and moving forward. So with doing all of that, even though I felt like I was healed, I was coming to a place of contentment and stuff like that, I felt like I had a puzzle that was just missing one piece, and I could not quite figure out what that piece was that was missing. And ironically, it was Islam, because literally as soon as I did my Shahada, even though I was like in shock that I did my shahada, because I didn't realize I was doing my shahada when I was doing my shahada. That's a whole story for another day. I do talk about it in my other videos. If you look at my journey to Islam and shahada story night, so go check that out if you want to like figure out more. Maybe I'll like talk about like my shahada experience into more detail and all that. But like I did my shahada and I was like more in shock, and then when it like hit me that I'm actually Muslim now, it's like this like tingly feeling came over me, and like I just felt like a sense of calm, and I just knew that that was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like hugging me and telling me welcome to Islam, welcome to the ummah and stuff like that. And it's a feeling I don't take for granted, because like there are times when my deen is low, and I remember like how I was before, and I remember my shahada in that moment and that feeling that I had after I did my shahada, and like everything just feels better and I feel okay, because I remember what it's like calling my friends and telling them, hey, I did my shahada, and calling my mom and all that stuff. I just remember like them laughing that I didn't know I was doing it, and like them saying that you even sound different. Like literally the day before, I have mostly talked to all these people, and literally like a day or like a week before, and them realizing that I'm already different just after doing my shahada. And that is something that I don't take for granted, and it's something that I am truly thankful for. I know I'm gonna cry in this video. This video is gonna make me cry. So let's get through it. The next video, the next thing, can't talk. The next way that Islam has changed me is that I finally have a relationship with God. And that may sound weird, because a lot of you know that I was like raised in a Christian household. But since I was little, I struggled with knowing who God is, struggled with connecting to God, struggling with like knowing him and so forth. Like, I don't know if I said that in one of my other videos or something, that even when I prayed, I only prayed to God the Father when I was a Christian. I never prayed to Jesus. I never called on Jesus for anything. I would just pray to God, to the Father. And that was like a disconnect in the religion, because it's the Holy Trinity, 3 in 1, and I will only call on one, which is kind of makes sense of how I became Muslim. But for me, it was something that I struggled with and needed more help and guidance with. And when I would try to become closer to God, I felt like there was always a barrier in between me and like the faith, like the God of the Christian faith. There was always like a barrier between me and him, and I just never could figure out how to break that barrier, how to get closer. And once I became Muslim, I honestly felt the Almighty's presence stronger than I've ever felt before. And I thought I knew what divine presence was, but after becoming Muslim, after having my own personal experiences, after having a dream when I was non-Muslim, realizing that Islam is for me, and after standing during Ramadan and doing Taraweeh and just being there, and that feeling that you get for those who feel it, and you know what I'm talking about, that is how I know that I finally have a connection with God, because I've never experienced divine like connection or intervention when it happens, and so forth. And most importantly, because I finally have a relationship with God, I feel like I can talk to God about everything. I'm more clear when it comes down to writing my prayers, if I want to write them. When I am in prayer or doing du'as, when I do du'as and talk to him, I am more confident than I've ever been before. And again, it's not something that I take for granted. I know how lucky I am to feel that, because there's so many people who lack that connection that don't have it. So all I can do is say alhamdulillah, because it's such a blessing to have that feeling. Next is finally looking forward to prayer. Like when as a Christian, praying was something that was so hard for me. Like hard. Like I am thankful that we have 5 prayers a day, and I can like, it gives me 5 opportunities to really talk to God a day, because before I could not talk to God literally maybe like for months. Like praying was something that was so hard for me. And granted, yes, there is like required sayings that we have in our prayers as Muslims, but there are certain parts when you can add your own personal du'as or your own personal prayers that you want to add and stuff like that. That's what du'as means, prayers, for those who are non-Muslim who are watching. So you can add parts of stuff that you want in certain parts of the prayer. And I do that, and I make sure that when I feel to talk to God about it, I do that, because when you have an urge to do something, you should listen to it, because you never know. So I try to like listen to it when I have an urge to talk to God about something, and knowing that I have no shame of what I will talk to him about. I'm not scared to talk to him about something, or like scared to seek forgiveness after I have sinned or done something wrong. There is like no shame between me and God, and it's such a beautiful feeling that I have that now, because it was something that I struggled with before, and it's something that I wanted, and subhanallah, I have it now, and I'm just extremely thankful. So the next thing that has changed me is that I feel things more deeply now than I do before. Like, somebody can literally give me a piece of candy, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's so sweet, and like I want to cry. But it's like, before I'll be like thankful, of course, but I like, when I want to cry, like when I hear parts of the Quran and stuff like that, like I feel it, like I want to cry. I don't even know some of the parts, but like I feel things more deeply than before. And it's so funny, like I could literally look at like a tree and see like all the intricate details that make it up. And I'm like, oh my goodness, look at what God has made. This is so beautiful. And like just be amazed by the simplest things, and like how God can create such an intricate tree out of like, you know, you're like, just where did this come from? Why is it so detailed and stuff like that? I like have that now compared to when I compared to before. I like see things and I'm more appreciative of them, if that makes sense. And my empathy has increased. I would say I was a pretty empathetic person before, but now it's like to the extreme of like empathy, where like I'm crying over like the smallest things and stuff like that, or like somebody's going through something and I feel like like somebody's like really happy, I'm like even extremely more happy for them. If somebody's sad, I'm like even sadder for them and stuff like that. It's such an interesting thing to go through, and I don't view it as like a bad thing. I just view it as like, I care for this person and I care for them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I want them to have the best, if that makes sense. Another thing that has changed is that my need to hear more Islamic texts or Islamic lectures and stuff like that. Like, I never thought I would like go and like listen to parts of a religious text during my like random day. Like, I never thought that I would be that person, because I'm just like, I literally will just go through something, or I'll be sad or happy, or just like, you know what, I need to hear the Quran. So I'll go look up something, find somebody who's reciting the Quran, press play where it has the English translation at the bottom, and read it and listen to it and like cry if I need to, or you know, whatever. And I didn't think that I would be that person. And also like my need to learn more, like I'm always trying to learn something more, watch an Islamic lecture so I can become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all that stuff. Another thing is that I don't take for granted is that the thing that intrigued me when it came to Islam is hearing the Quran recited for the first time. And when I heard it, I started crying. And the fact that I could still play the Quran and start crying is like something like a full circle moment. It's like, what made you interested in Islam is crying when you hear the Quran. And you still hear the Quran today and you cry when you hear it in certain parts. And not a lot of people have that feeling. Not a lot of people get that. And I can just like be so thankful that I'm so privileged to have that feeling and to have that happen and so forth. And the best thing is, because I play the Quran so much and I have a playlist of like my favorite Quran recitations, when I go on YouTube and I get like, they'll be like, most beautiful Quran recitation, blah, blah, blah. And I click on it and I'm like happy that like my algorithm like pays attention to what I watch, what I listen to. And I find new Quran reciters, and like just hearing the Quran when you need to. And literally sometimes it feels like I always feel like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming down and hugging you and letting you know that everything will be okay. Like, think about like a little kid who falls down and they run to the parent, and the parent's like, it's okay, and they give them a kiss and a hug. And you know that feeling that you get when someone like you're sad and someone you love just hugs you and tells you that everything is gonna be okay? That is what I feel, and it's something, again, that I don't take for granted. Another thing that has happened is loving people for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, of course, you can love people because of who they are, but also remembering who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is while loving them, if that makes sense. So there is times where people, you have interactions with people, your loved ones, people who do this, people who do that, who can be a bit challenging sometimes. They say things that are hurtful, they do this, they say that. There's people that you may meet who are just rude and stuff like that, and you want to be rude back, but then you remember who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and you realize in that moment, oh, this person's obviously going through something. Oh, you know what, this person must be like someone who has trauma, and they're just like exuding their trauma onto you. This person's having a bad day, so they're taking it on you, and you take a step back and you're nice to that person, all because of the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that person is living in their trauma, living in their ego, not realizing that they're spilling out their negative energy onto you. And instead of you coming down in the level of being the same way as them, you're like, you know what? I remember who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. I understand you're having a bad day. I'm not going to let your negativity transfer onto me, because I know who I am and I know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, if that makes sense. So I remember that in those moments. And also when people go out of the way for me and do something for me, saying alhamdulillah for that moment and telling them jazakallah khair, because they did something for me and because they did something that was so beautiful and they thought of me, remembering who Allah is in that moment to say jazakallah khair, if that makes sense. And lastly, the biggest way that I have changed since becoming Muslim is growing in faith. I was someone who struggled with faith for a very, very long time. And finally having a faith that I can call mine, or religion that I can go to and feel contentment and don't feel like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. I'm not questioning it. I like believe in it so much, and I feel the divine connection to it so much that my faith continues to grow is such a beautiful thing. It's something that I never pictured for myself, and it's the most beautiful gift that I have been given. And I've said this before, my biggest accomplishment is not graduating from high school, it's not graduating with my bachelor's, it's not getting my master's, it's not this, that. It's literally becoming Muslim. Because all that stuff can be taken away from me, but Islam will always be here for me. And I never thought I would say that about a faith. I never thought about me saying it when I was a Christian and all that stuff. And that's how it changed me. And it's so nice when people who've known me before I became Muslim come up to me and they're like, you know, I really see the difference in you. I really see how this faith changed you, and it's very inspiring and stuff like that, because it's not me, it's all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that did this. And because of me growing in faith, it makes people inspired to grow in faith, because like what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me is like branching out into those around me, and that is even more beautiful. Like even led to one of my close loved ones to become Muslim and so forth. And it's something so beautiful that has happened, and I just know that inshallah my faith will continue to grow, and inshallah I will become have a good amount of knowledge, and, you know, continue to learn. I never want to stop being a student when it comes to Islam. So this is how Islam has changed me when it comes to my faith and so forth. I thought I was gonna cry way more in this video, but I've held it together and stuff like that. But that is how Islam has changed me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
بين الرجاء والخوف قلبي طائر ومن اليقين